The white hospital walls seemed to close in on Oliver Yates as he stared at the woman sitting beside his bed, her eyes red-rimmed and hopeful, waiting for something he couldn't give her. "I'm sorry," he said again, the words feeling hollow in his mouth. "I just don't remember you." The woman, Florence Parker according to the nurse who had introduced them, pressed her lips together and nodded. She had auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and green eyes that held an ocean of pain. She was beautiful, he could see that objectively, but looking at her felt like staring at a stranger's photograph. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice cracked. "The doctors said this might happen. The accident, the head trauma, it affected your memory." She stood up, smoothing down her navy dress with trembling hands. "I should go. Let you rest." Oliver watched her leave, something uncomfortable twisting in his chest that he couldn't quite name. After she was gone, his business partner Marcus arrived with a thick folder of documents. "We need to get you caught up," Marcus said, settling into the chair Florence had vacated. "The real estate development company won't run itself, and the Riverside project needs your approval." Over the next week, Oliver learned about his life in fragments. He was 32 years old and had built Yates Development into one of the most successful commercial real estate companies on the East Coast. He owned a penthouse in the city, drove an Aston Martin, and had a net worth that made him feel disconnected from reality. What he couldn't remember, what remained frustratingly blank, was the past 2 years. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, a result of the car accident that had nearly killed him. And somewhere in those missing 2 years, he had apparently fallen in love with Florence Parker. She came to visit every day, though she never stayed long. She would sit in the chair beside his bed, tell him small stories about their life together, and then leave before the silence became too painful. Oliver tried to feel something, tried to force the memories to surface, but there was only emptiness where she should have been. "We met at a charity gala," she told him on the 5th day. "You spilled champagne on my dress and I was so angry. But then you made me laugh and we ended up talking until 3 in the morning." Oliver searched her face, looking for some spark of recognition, some buried memory fighting to surface. Nothing came. "How long were we together?" he asked. 18 months. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You proposed 3 weeks before the accident." His gaze dropped to her left hand where a diamond ring still glinted. She noticed him looking and twisted it absently. "I haven't been able to take it off," she admitted. "Even though I know you don't remember giving it to me." The guilt was worse than the not knowing. 2 weeks after waking up in the hospital, Oliver was cleared to go home. Marcus drove him to the penthouse, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It should have felt familiar, but it was just another expensive hotel room to him. Florence had packed up her things, Marcus explained. She had been living there with him before the accident, but she had moved back to her own apartment to give him space. Oliver found evidence of her presence anyway, small gaps where her belongings had been, an extra toothbrush holder in the bathroom, a book on the nightstand with a bookmark halfway through. He picked up the book and read the title, The Architecture of Happiness. Inside the cover, his own handwriting stared back at him. "For Florence, who taught me what home really means. All my love, Oliver." He set the book down carefully, as if it might shatter. Work became his refuge. At the office, surrounded by blueprints and contracts and financial projections, he felt competent. His team welcomed him back with enthusiasm, and he threw himself into the Riverside project, a mixed-use development that would transform a neglected waterfront area into a thriving community space. 3 weeks into his return, Marcus mentioned that Florence worked as an architect at Cooper and Associates, the firm they had partnered with for several projects. "She's brilliant," Marcus said over coffee in Oliver's office. Actually, she was the lead architect on the Riverside project. That's how you two met originally. At the gala, yes, but you were already aware of her work. You specifically requested her for the team. Something uncomfortable shifted in Oliver's chest. Is she still working on it? She took a leave of absence after your accident, Marcus said. But she's back now. We have a meeting with Cooper and Associates next week to review the updated designs. Oliver told himself the anticipation he felt was just curiosity, nothing more. The meeting took place in a sleek conference room downtown. Oliver arrived early, reviewing the project files when Florence walked in with her team. She wore a charcoal blazer and had her hair pulled back in a professional twist. When their eyes met, she gave him a polite, distant smile, the kind you would give a colleague you barely knew. It hurt more than he expected. But then she started presenting the architectural plans, and Oliver forgot to feel awkward. She was captivating, speaking with passion about sustainable design and community integration, about creating spaces that served people rather than simply existing. Her eyes lit up when she talked about the public park they had incorporated, the affordable housing units, the small business storefronts. The goal, she said, her fingers tracing the lines on the blueprint, is to build something that becomes part of the neighborhood's fabric, not something that displaces it. Oliver found himself leaning forward. What about the environmental impact assessments? She met his gaze directly. Already completed. We're implementing a green roof system, solar panels, and rainwater harvesting. The building will be LEED Platinum certified. They fell into a discussion about load-bearing structures and zoning requirements, and for a moment, everything else fell away. When the meeting ended 2 hours later, Oliver realized he had barely looked at anyone else in the room. As everyone packed up, he found himself walking over to her. "Can we talk?" "Just for a minute," Florence hesitated, then nodded. They stepped out into the hallway and suddenly Oliver didn't know what to say. "Your designs are incredible," he finally managed. "Marcus was right about you being brilliant. Thank you." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "The Riverside project means a lot to me." "I'm glad you're happy with the direction." "I want to learn more about it," he said. "About the process, your vision for it. Would you be willing to meet with me? Outside of the official presentations," she studied him carefully. "Oliver, I don't want to make this harder than it already is." "I'm not trying to," he said quickly. "I just want to understand the project better, and maybe understand why I fell in love with you." The words hung between them. Florence's expression softened, became sad. "You fell in love with me because of who we were together," she said quietly. "Not because of bullet points you can learn from a meeting. But yes, I'll meet with you about the project. It's important work. We should get it right." They started meeting twice a week at a coffee shop halfway between their offices. Florence would bring sketches and samples, and they would discuss everything from facade materials to community feedback. Oliver looked forward to those meetings more than he wanted to admit. She made him think differently about his work, made him see beyond profit margins and return on investment. "Why real estate development?" she asked one afternoon, stirring sugar into her cappuccino. "What made you choose this career?" Oliver considered the question. "According to my parents, I was always building things as a kid. Legos, model houses, that kind of thing. I studied business and architecture in college, thought I could combine them." He paused. "Though honestly, most of my memories of my motivations are gone. I'm going off what people have told me." "You once told me," Florence said carefully, "that you wanted to build things that lasted. That you got tired of seeing developers throw up cheap buildings that fell apart in 10 years just to make a quick profit. You wanted to do it differently." "Did I succeed?" he asked. She smiled. "You're succeeding with Riverside. Before, you did some projects that were more about money than meaning. But you were changing. You wanted your work to matter. Over the following weeks, Oliver found himself thinking about her constantly. The way she laughed when he made a terrible joke about load-bearing walls. The fierce concentration on her face when she sketched. The passion in her voice when she talked about architecture's power to shape lives. He started noticing small things, the freckle on her left wrist, the way she always ordered her coffee the same way, the fact that she carried a battered notebook everywhere and filled it with observations and ideas. He was falling for her, he realized with a jolt one evening. Falling for her as if for the first time, with no memories to guide him, just the simple truth of who she was in front of him. But she held herself at a distance, always professional, always careful. When their hands accidentally brushed reaching for the same pencil, she pulled back quickly. When he tried to steer the conversation toward personal topics, she redirected to work. She was protecting herself, he understood, and he couldn't blame her. 2 months after his return to work, they visited the Riverside construction site together. The foundation had been poured and the steel framework was going up. They walked through the muddy lot, Florence pointing out where different elements would be. "The park will be here," she said, gesturing to an empty space on the east side. "We're keeping those 3 oak trees, the ones that have been here for probably 70 years. We'll build around them." "Why those trees specifically?" Oliver asked, stepping over a pile of rebar. "Because they're part of the neighborhood's history," Florence said. "The people who live here have memories connected to them. Kids who climbed them, couples who had first kisses under them. Architecture isn't just about the new things we build. It's about honoring what was already there." Oliver watched her, this woman who had loved him and lost him and still showed up every day to do the work they had started together. In that moment, standing in the mud surrounded by concrete and steel, he knew he couldn't keep pretending this was just about the project. "Florence," he said, "I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, wariness in her eyes. "I don't remember falling in love with you the first time," he said slowly. "I don't have those memories and I might never get them back, but I'm falling in love with you now. Right now, as you are, as we are." Her eyes filled with tears. "Oliver, don't." "Why not?" "Because I don't know if I can do this again," she said, her voice breaking. "When you woke up in that hospital and looked at me like I was a stranger, it destroyed me. It took everything I had to pull myself together to keep showing up, to be professional. I've been trying so hard to move on, to accept that the man I loved is gone." "I'm not gone," he said. "I'm right here." "But you're different," she said. "The Oliver I knew," he remembered our first kiss, our first fight, the night he proposed. He knew how I took my coffee because he had made it for me 100 times. "You don't have any of that. We'd be starting from nothing." "So we start from nothing," Oliver said. "People do it every day. They meet, they connect, they fall in love. We can do that." "It's not the same." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But maybe it doesn't have to be." Florence wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need time to think about this, please." He nodded, though it hurt to step back. "Take all the time you need." She left the construction site, and Oliver stood alone among the skeletal framework of the building they were creating together, wondering if he had just made a terrible mistake. A week passed with no word from her. The meeting stopped. At work, they communicated through email only, brief and professional. Marcus noticed and tried to offer advice, but Oliver waved him off. This was something he had to figure out himself. He went to see his mother, something he had been avoiding since leaving the hospital. Catherine Yates lived in a sprawling house in the suburbs, the house where Oliver had grown up. She welcomed him with tight hugs and concerned questions about his health. Over dinner, he told her about Florence. "I remember her," his mother said, smiling. "You brought her to Christmas last year." She was lovely and you were so happy, Oliver. I hadn't seen you that happy in years." "What was I like before?" he asked. "Before I met her," Catherine considered this. "Driven, successful, but lonely, I think. You worked all the time, didn't have much of a life outside the office. When you met Florence, you started slowing down, making time for other things. She was good for you." "I'm in love with her," Oliver said, "even without the memories, but she's scared." "Of course she's scared," his mother said gently. "She lost you once already. Asking her to risk her heart again is asking a lot." "So what do I do?" "You be patient," Catherine said. "You show her that this version of you is worth the risk, and you let her make her own choice, whatever that might be." Oliver returned to the city with his mother's words echoing in his mind. He threw himself back into work, but his heart wasn't in it. He kept catching himself staring at his phone, hoping for a message from Florence that never came. Then, 2 weeks after their conversation at the construction site, she showed up at his office. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed but determined. Oliver stood up from his desk, his heart hammering. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble, "about what you said about starting over." And he barely dared to breathe. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm also miserable without you. These past 2 months, working with you, getting to know you again, it's been torture because I kept seeing glimpses of the man I fell in love with. But also someone new, someone different. And I'm falling for you too, this version of you, and it's confusing and scary and I don't know what to do with it." Oliver crossed the office to stand in front of her. "What if we just take it one day at a time? No pressure, no expectations, just us, figuring it out together." She looked up at him, and for the first time in months he saw hope in her eyes. "One day at a time, one day at a time," he confirmed. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." Their first official date was intentionally low-key. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant neither of them had been to before. No old memories to haunt them, just new territory to explore together. Oliver found himself nervous in a way he couldn't remember being before, though that might have been the amnesia talking. Florence wore a green dress that matched her eyes, and when she smiled at something he said, he felt like he had won the lottery. "Tell me about your family," he said over pasta. "Not about us, just about you." She talked about growing up in Vermont, the youngest of 3 sisters. Her father was a contractor, her mother a teacher. She had always loved drawing buildings, imagining new spaces. "I wanted to create places where people felt safe," she said, "where they felt like they belonged. My dad used to take me to his work sites, and I was fascinated by how a space could transform, how something new could rise from nothing." "Is that why you became an architect?" "Partly. Also because I'm stubborn and everyone said it was too competitive a field." She grinned. "Turns out spite is a great motivator." He laughed, and the tension between them eased. They talked for hours about architecture and business and books and travel. When he walked her to her car, he didn't try to kiss her, just squeezed her hand and told her he had a wonderful time. "Me too," she said softly. They fell into a rhythm over the next several weeks. Dates every few days, always somewhere new. A jazz club where they discovered they both had terrible rhythm. A museum where they got into a heated debate about modern art. A cooking class where they burned their paella and laughed until they cried. Oliver learned her all over again. He learned that she was afraid of spiders but loved snakes. That she had a terrible singing voice but sang anyway when she was happy. That she was fiercely competitive at board games and a gracious loser at sports. That she cried at commercials but stayed dry-eyed during sad movies. That she believed in second chances and fighting for what mattered. He fell more in love with her every day. The Riverside project progressed, the building taking shape floor by floor. They walked the site together regularly, and Oliver could see her vision coming to life. The space she had imagined, the community she had planned for, it was all becoming real. "This is your legacy," he told her one afternoon, standing in what would become the public park. The oak trees stood tall and protected, the construction working around them exactly as she had designed. "Our legacy," she corrected. "You made this possible, Oliver. You took a risk on a project that prioritized people over profit. A lot of developers wouldn't have done that." "Apparently I learned from the best," he said, bumping her shoulder with his. She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her waist. It felt natural now, touching her, being close to her. The awkwardness had faded, replaced by a comfort that felt both new and somehow ancient. 4 months into their second beginning, Florence invited him to her apartment for dinner. It was the first time he had been there, and he looked around with interest. It was smaller than his penthouse but filled with personality. Bookshelves crammed with novels and architecture journals. Framed sketches on the walls, some professional and some whimsical. Plants everywhere, thriving under her care. "I like it," he said. "It feels like you," she smiled, stirring something on the stove. "I've lived here for 6 years. It's home." Over dinner, homemade lasagna that was delicious, she seemed nervous. Oliver waited, sensing she had something on her mind. Finally, as they were clearing the dishes, she said, "I need to tell you something." His stomach dropped. "Okay. When you proposed before, I was so happy. I thought we would have forever." She set down the plate she was holding. "But then the accident happened, and you didn't know me, and I had to accept that the future I imagined was gone. I grieved for it, for us, for the wedding we would never have." "Florence," he started, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish. These past months with you, falling in love again, it's been amazing. But I need to know that this is real for you, that you're not just trying to recapture something you lost or fulfill some obligation you feel because we were engaged before." He moved closer to her, taking her hands in his. "I won't lie and say the past doesn't matter. I wish I could remember our first kiss, our proposal, all of it. But what I feel for you now has nothing to do with obligation or lost memories. I love you, Florence. This you, here now. I love your passion and your kindness and the way you see the world. I love that you made me rethink everything about my work and my life. I love you completely, and that's not about the past. It's about who we are right now." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too, so much. I was so afraid to hope, but I can't help it anymore." He kissed her then, properly, deeply, and it felt like coming home and discovering something new all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she was smiling through her tears. "Stay," she whispered. "Tonight, just stay." He stayed, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. 6 months after waking up in the hospital, Oliver stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. Florence was still asleep in his bed, her auburn hair spread across his pillow. They had spent half the week at his place, half at hers, slowly merging their lives back together. Marcus had noticed the change in him. "You're different," he said at their last meeting. "More focused, but also more relaxed. It's a good look on you." Oliver knew what he meant. Having Florence back in his life, building something real with her, it had given him a sense of purpose beyond just the work. The Riverside project was nearing completion, and they were already discussing future collaborations. But more than that, he had someone to share his life with, someone who challenged him and supported him and made him want to be better. He heard her footsteps behind him and turned to find her wrapped in one of his shirts, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, handing him a mug. "Just thinking," he said, "about how lucky I am." She leaned against the railing beside him. "Even though you lost 2 years of memories, even though," he confirmed, "maybe especially because I got to fall in love with you twice, Florence. How many people can say that?" She smiled, that radiant smile that made his chest ache. When you put it that way. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city wake up. I've been thinking about something, Oliver said. About what you said that night at your apartment, about the future we lost. She turned to look at him, her expression guarded. What if we didn't lose it? He continued. What if we just postponed it? Understanding dawned in her eyes. Oliver. He set down his coffee mug and pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was the engagement ring she had returned to him months ago, the one he had given her before the accident. But next to it was a new ring, a different design, emerald cut with smaller diamonds on the band. I know I proposed before, he said, and I know you said yes. But I don't remember that moment, and you deserve a proposal you won't have to explain to the man who gave you the ring. He took her hand, his heart racing. Florence Parker, you are the most extraordinary person I've ever met. You taught me what it means to build something that matters. You took a chance on me when I was a stranger who wore your fiancée's face. You let me fall in love with you all over again. Will you marry me? Not because I did it before, but because I'm choosing you right now, today, with everything I am. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the new ring on her finger and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like coffee and salt and joy. When they finally broke apart, she held up her hand, admiring how the diamond caught the morning light. What about the old ring? She asked. Keep it, he said. Or don't, that's up to you, but this one is ours from this version of us. She nodded, wrapping her arms around him. I love you so much. I love you too. The Riverside project opened 8 months later with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by city officials, local residents, and press. Florence stood beside Oliver, beaming as the mayor praised the development's innovative design and community focus. The affordable housing units were already occupied, the small business spaces were leasing quickly, and the public park had become a neighborhood gathering place. You did it, Oliver whispered to her during the speeches. You created something beautiful. We did it, she corrected. After the ceremony, they walked through the park hand in hand. Children played on the new playground, families picnicked on the grass, and couples strolled along the walking paths. The 3 oak trees stood tall and proud, exactly as Florence had envisioned. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at a vineyard upstate. Oliver's mother cried happy tears, and Florence's 3 sisters served as her bridesmaids. Marcus was the best man, and gave a toast about second chances and stubborn architects who refused to give up on the people they loved. Oliver's vows made Florence cry. I may not remember the first time I fell in love with you, he said, but I will spend every day for the rest of my life making new memories with you. You are my home, Florence. My partner, my love, my everything. Thank you for letting me find my way back to you. Her vows were equally emotional. You once told me that you wanted to build things that lasted, she said. Well, you built something that survived even amnesia. Our love, our partnership, it was strong enough to come back from the impossible. I choose you, Oliver, today and every day. Let's build a life together that will last forever. They honeymooned in Italy, eating their way through Tuscany and admiring Renaissance architecture. Oliver took what felt like 1,000 photos of Florence, wanting to document every moment, every smile, every memory they were creating together. A year after their wedding, they bought a house together, something between his penthouse and her cozy apartment. A brownstone with good bones that needed renovation. They spent weekends stripping wallpaper and refinishing floors, arguing cheerfully about paint colors and arguing less cheerfully about whether they needed a home office or a library. We can have both, Florence finally declared, if we convert the attic. Oliver, who had learned not to argue with her about spatial design, agreed. 2 years into their marriage, Florence told him she was pregnant. They were at another construction site, this time for a community center they were building together, when she showed him the positive test. "We're having a baby," she said, her voice full of wonder. Oliver pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy. "We're having a baby," he repeated, as if saying it would make it feel real. Their daughter was born on a sunny May morning with a tuft of auburn hair and her mother's green eyes. They named her Claire, and Oliver fell in love all over again the moment he held her, being a father terrified and amazed him in equal measure. He changed diapers and walked the floor at 3 in the morning and learned to function on minimal sleep. Florence was a natural, patient, and loving, and somehow always knowing what Claire needed. "You're good at this," Oliver told her one night, watching her rock Claire back to sleep. "So are you," she said, "even if you do put her onesies on backward half the time." He laughed quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. "I'm learning. We both are." On Claire's first birthday, they had a small party at their house. Oliver's mother came, along with Florence's family and their closest friends. As he watched Florence laugh with her sisters while Claire smashed cake all over her face, Oliver felt a profound sense of contentment. Marcus pulled him aside at one point. "You know, when you first woke up in that hospital, I wasn't sure you'd make it back. Not physically, you recovered fine. But mentally, emotionally, you were so lost." "I was," Oliver agreed. "But look at you now," Marcus said, gesturing at the scene around them. "You found your way, you built something real." Oliver smiled. "I had help, a stubborn architect who refused to let me stay lost." That night, after everyone had gone home and Claire was asleep, Oliver and Florence sat in their backyard, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. "Happy?" she asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Incredibly," he said. "I know this isn't the life you originally imagined." "The man you fell in love with, the one who proposed the first time, he had all his memories. He knew your whole history together." "Stop," Florence said, sitting up to look at him. "That man was wonderful and I loved him, but you are equally wonderful and I love you just as much. Maybe more because we fought so hard to get here. We chose each other twice, Oliver. That's not a tragedy. That's a gift." He kissed her forehead. "When did you get so wise?" "I was always wise," she said. "You just forgot." He laughed, pulling her back against his chest. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city in the distance. "You ever wonder what you would remember?" Florence asked quietly. "If you could get those 2 years back, would you want them?" Oliver considered this. He had asked himself the same question many times over the years. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me will always wish I could remember our first kiss, our first date, the moment I realized I loved you. But another part of me thinks that maybe losing those memories was necessary. It forced us to be intentional about choosing each other. We didn't just coast on the momentum of an existing relationship. We built something new, something stronger." "I like that perspective," Florence said. "Plus," Oliver added, "I have all these memories now. Our second first date. Our wedding, Claire's birth. Those are ours and nobody can take them away." She turned to kiss him properly. "I love you, Oliver Yates." "I love you too, Florence Yates." 5 years after the accident, Yates Development and Cooper and Associates announced a major partnership to create affordable, sustainable housing across the city. Oliver and Florence led the initiative together, combining his business acumen with her design genius. They worked side by side, balancing their professional partnership with their marriage and raising Claire, who turned out to be as stubborn and creative as both her parents. She loved drawing buildings, just like her mother, and insisted on wearing a toy hard hat everywhere. Oliver never did recover those lost 2 years of memories. The doctors said it was unlikely he ever would, but he found he didn't mind as much as he thought he would. The life he had built with Florence, the family they had created, the work they were doing together, it was more than enough. Sometimes, late at night, Florence would tell him stories about their early days together. The champagne incident at the gala, their first kiss in the rain outside her apartment, the weekend trip to the beach where he had planned to propose, but chickened out 3 times before finally asking on the last day. Oliver loved these stories, listening to her voice in the darkness, imagining the moments he couldn't remember. But they felt less like his own memories and more like beloved stories about 2 other people, younger versions of themselves who had started something beautiful. "You miss him?" he asked once. "The version of me who remembered." Florence was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I look at you now, at the man you've become, at the life we've built, and I think maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. We got our happy ending, Oliver, just not the one we originally planned." "I like our ending better," he said. "Me too." Years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work and ordinary magic. Claire grew into a bright, curious child who asked endless questions and built elaborate structures out of whatever materials she could find. Oliver and Florence's company expanded, creating communities across multiple cities, each one designed with care and intention. They took family vacations to places they had never been, creating new memories untainted by the past Oliver couldn't recall. They had fights and makeups and lazy Sunday mornings. They supported each other through difficult projects and celebrated victories together. They were partners in every sense of the word, building a life that was uniquely theirs. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Oliver took Florence back to the riverside development, to the park with the 3 oak trees. It had matured beautifully over the years, becoming the heart of a thriving community just as she had envisioned. "I wanted to bring you here," he said, "because this is where I knew for certain that I loved you, standing right here watching you talk about honoring history and building for the future. That was the moment I couldn't deny it anymore." Florence smiled, taking his hand. "I remember that day. I was so scared of what you were about to say. Were you happy when I said it?" "Terrified and happy," she said. "The best kind of feeling." He pulled a small wrapped box from his pocket. "I got you something." She unwrapped it to find a silver bracelet with 3 charms, an oak tree, a blueprint, and a tiny house. "The tree for this place where everything changed," Oliver explained. "The blueprint for the work we do together, and the house for the home we've built." Tears filled her eyes. "It's perfect." He clasped it around her wrist, then pulled her close. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for letting me fall in love with you again, for building this incredible life with me. Thank you for coming back to me," she whispered. "Even though you had to find a different path to get here." They kissed under the oak trees while their daughter played nearby, and the community they had built together hummed with life around them. It wasn't the life they had originally planned, but it was theirs, hard-won and deeply loved. Oliver had lost 2 years of memories, had lost the knowledge of falling in love the first time. But in return, he had gained something precious, the certainty that came from choosing Florence every single day. Not because of shared history or faded memories, but because of who they were together, right now, in this moment. He had fallen for her twice, and he would keep falling for her every day for the rest of their lives. That was the greatest gift the accident had given him, though it had taken years to understand it. Not loss, but renewal. Not an ending, but a new beginning. And as they walked home together, hand in hand, their daughter between them chattering about the castle she was going to design when she grew up, Oliver knew he was the luckiest man alive. He had everything he needed. A woman he loved beyond measure, a family that filled his days with joy, and work that mattered. The memories he had lost would always be gone, a blank space in his history. But the life he had found was richer than anything he could have imagined. Sometimes you had to lose everything to discover what truly mattered. Sometimes the best love story was the one you got to live twice. And sometimes, falling in love again with the same person was exactly what you needed to understand just how precious that love really was.